everyone, and welcome to another episode of Rick's Garage. I'm, of course, your host, Rick the Welder, and I hope you guys are getting as excited as I am for the beginning of Phase 2 of Miss Vicky's upgrades. Now, if you don't know what Phase 2 is, here's a link to Episode 7 where I go over the 3 phases of work. While I've been racking up some kilometers for the clutch break-in, I've had a few people ask me about the Wilwood brake kit, specifically the 2-piece rotors. Now, I installed the kit back in Episode 9. Although there's a few pieces that make it specific to the Civic, overall it's a pretty universal application. So today let's take a look back in a little bit more detail on how those 2-piece rotors are assembled. Okay, let's start putting these beautiful rotors together. So top hat, very nicely made, drilled for a 2-bolt pattern. On the box it said 5 on 4.5 and 5 on 4 3/4. Okay, so we'll set that down. We've got all the fasteners and the actual disc. For some reason, powder coated on both sides, so that's going to get worn off pretty quick once the brake pads hit it. All right, there is a directional arrow. This will be the rotor for the front left, so when you're doing your own, just make sure that there is an indicator there so you don't put them on the wrong side of the car. We're going to get the fastener kit, and we're going to put a little drop of red Loctite as per the instructions, and once they're all in snug, then we're going to torque them down to 155 inch-pounds. Now don't be confused with foot-pounds, you'll snap these things right off. That is 155 inch-pounds. So I'm going to try to do a close-up here. You'll notice that on the head of these bolts there is a hole in them, and that is for an extra added bit of safety. What we're going to do is after these are all installed and torqued down, we're going to get this roll of safety wire and wire all the studs together to make sure that nothing comes loose. But we'll touch on that in a second. Before we wire up the rotor, I'm going to go through the tool that we're going to be using to do it. So these are wire twist pliers or safety wire pliers, whatever you want to call them. And they work very similarly to a regular pair of pliers. The difference though is that these not only will lock the handle through this slide, this mechanism will also spin the wire while it's gripped in the teeth, and that will give you that nice even twist action. So quite simply, all you've got to do, like a regular pair of pliers, crimp the wire in the end. You've got the little latch here. Once that gets squeezed together, slide that locking mechanism back, and now this is locked in place. So the advantage here is then you can start pulling on it, get a bit of tension behind it. So when the wire is under tension, you pull that and it actually spins the pliers. Okay, so that's the way the pliers work. Let's take a closer look on the rotor and start wiring them up. Alright, so first thing you've got to do is get your roll of safety wire and measure out roughly how much you're going to need. What I like to do is have a little bit of excess past, measure between the bolts times 2, and a little bit of extra. So the whole idea of wiring up 2 bolts together is to prevent any type of loosening, because obviously in the case of the rotors you don't want these things to come flying apart when you're at speed. Start off by getting the wire more or less halfway through the bolt, and you want to have a little bit of extra on one, and that's going to be the side that wraps around the end of the bolt. So very important, and this is very easy to do this backwards. What you want to do if you're wiring these two together is you want to come from the top or the outside edge of the circumference on the one on the left down to the underside to the bottom on the right. Now the reason why that is because, as I mentioned, this is to prevent these bolts from loosening. So you want to have the wire in a way so that if you were to try to loosen the bolt, it actually makes it tighter with the wire. If we were to go the other way, as you were trying to loosen that, it would end up giving slack with the wire, whereas coming around this way, it's going to prevent it. So what we're going to do here, the top one is going to go straight down. The bottom one, we're going to wrap it around the head of the bolt, and then tuck it underneath the one that went straight across. So the next step is you measure out to the next hole in the bolt here, get your pliers, clamp onto the wires just past the hole for the next bolt, squeeze the pliers together, slide it to lock, so now this is locked in. So we're going to hold a little bit of tension on this and just pull the plunger. Now, very important, I haven't let go of this yet. You have to be able to hold onto the pliers and let go of the plunger to allow it to slide back in, because if you don't, the pliers are just going to unravel themselves and undo all the twists on the wire. So it's just a matter of spinning it, and in terms of how many twists you need, I've heard anywhere from 7 per inch to 10 per inch. I would say if you can get somewhere in the middle of that, if you're really concerned about it, you can get a tape measure and run it along here and actually measure to see how many twists you've got. But if you do too many, it's going to snap. If you do too few, there's just not going to be enough tension on the wire. But it should look something like this when it's about right. To release the pliers, all you have to do is squeeze. Pops the release open. We're going to locate the hole in the bolt. Feed the wire through. There we go. So now that it's through the second bolt, we're going to wrap this counterclockwise and have the pigtail up top. Across like so. And the one here is going to wrap around the bolt. And then much like the first time, we're going to pop that underneath the other wire here. Alright, try to keep a little bit of tension on it. The less slack, the better. So unlike the first one, unfortunately you can't actually use the pliers with the plunger in this case because the pliers naturally want to wrap clockwise. And as you can see with this last wire going around the outside, if we were to turn this clockwise, it would just roll this over top of the bolt and it would fall off. So this one, for the second twist, we have to do it counterclockwise. The good news, once you lock the wire in, with that little slide, you can actually get a pretty good twist just by hand. Squeeze the pliers to release, and then it's a matter of trimming off the excess. What I like to do is get a pair of needle nose pliers, take that pigtail, curl it in on itself, so you don't end up catching fingers and ripping skin off. And there you are. One wired up, safe set of bolts. So now it's just a matter of doing that a few more times, and this will be ready to put on the car. Well, that was a little bit more work than a regular brake job, and unfortunately that process is going to have to be repeated every time I change the rotors, but having the peace of mind knowing that they're not going to be coming apart on the rotor track is definitely worth the extra effort. As always, guys, thank you very much for watching. If you like what you see, there's a button for that, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button for instant notifications as soon as Phase 2 is ready to go.